On Monday, March 13, 2017, Lindsey had a day filled with various tasks and events. The 31-year-old woman first worked her shift and then went to the gym, where she practiced martial arts. After training, Lindsey stopped by the supermarket to do some shopping. Returning home around 8:30 p.m., Lindsey planned to simply relax after a busy day, as she had to go to work again in the morning at the local police department, where she was employed full-time as an IT specialist. Finally finding herself in her cozy little house with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on Meneheli Wu Lane, Lindsey took off her shoes with great relief, ready to unwind. But at that very moment, the most horrific ordeal awaited her, not only of that day but of her entire life. The perpetrator, who had been hiding in her own home all this time, caught Lindsey off guard as soon as she closed the front door behind her. The following morning, March 14th, at the Lexington County Sheriff's Department in South Carolina, where Lindsey worked, it seemed like just another ordinary day. Employees arrived at work as usual, but everyone noticed that Lindsey unexpectedly failed to show up at her regular time. Her absence was immediately noticeable, as Lindsey was the life of the party, always bringing excitement to the mundane police routine. Energetic and athletic, she typically arrived at work as one of the first, since she exercised in the morning. Lindsey had long been passionate about a healthy lifestyle and tried to get everyone around her involved. So it's no surprise that her absence caused astonishment and concern among her colleagues. At first, they sent her a message but received no response. Then they tried calling, but Lindsey didn't answer her phone either. Such behavior was extremely uncharacteristic of Lindsey, a punctual and responsible employee who always notified others if she couldn't come to work due to illness or other reasons. This only heightened suspicions, and the tension grew with each passing minute. Since the missing person was a police officer, law enforcement immediately sprang into action, as they always paid special attention to their own. The nearest patrol car promptly set off for Lindsey's house. Behind the wheel was Shannon Lovell, a good friend of the missing woman. Arriving at the scene around 10 a.m., he knocked on the front door, but no one answered. The man then headed to the back entrance and saw a chilling sight. The door had been literally smashed to pieces, as if someone had hacked at it with an axe. The patrol officer surmised that someone had broken into his colleague's home, possibly holding her hostage or waiting inside for law enforcement. The situation was escalating. Deputy Sheriff Lovell called for backup, which arrived within minutes. Local police entered the house, not even imagining the horrific scene that awaited them. Hearing the sound of running water inside, they thought Lindsey might be taking a shower and simply hadn't heard them barge in. Still on high alert, the officers went upstairs to the bathroom with a drawn shower curtain, behind which the water was running. Pulling the curtain aside, they finally found Lindsey Lee. Her body lay in the bathtub in an unnatural position, the water red with blood oozing from a deep, 10-centimeter-long gash across her throat. Lindsey Nicole Pilkington was born in September 1985 to Debbie Cottran and Steve Pilkington, who were living in Arkansas at the time. The arrival of their daughter brought true joy to the parents, who couldn't get enough of the little addition to their family. When Lindsey turned 5, her little sister Christy was born in 1990. Although the adults' attention was now more focused on the infant, this didn't affect Lindsey in any way, as she remained an energetic and restless child. The girl happily took on the role of big sister, and the whole family quickly adapted to the new circumstances. Over time, as Christy grew older, the sisters became inseparable friends. Lindsey was a role model for her younger sister, so all her interests and endeavors found an instant response. The charismatic Lindsey naturally became the leader among the children, with the younger sister following her example. As soon as Lindsey got into roller skating, Christy was practicing on them the very next day. This was the case with everything, up until the tragic events that occurred later on. The Pilkington sisters spent their childhood in the city of Hot Springs, Arkansas. However, due to limited career opportunities in this suburb, the head of the family decided to enlist in the military and completed basic training by 1987. At the time of the move to California, little Lindsey was only 2 years old. Her father's military career required frequent relocations, so the family constantly changed their place of residence, traveling through various cities and states until they finally settled in South Carolina. This way of life helped Lindsey quickly adapt to diverse conditions and contributed to her development. The girl never had trouble communicating with people, easily captivating her interlocutors with her temperament and confidence. Lindsey exhibited extraordinary mental abilities, especially in the exact sciences, which manifested themselves from the early grades. Despite her vivid individuality and pleasant character, in high school, she faced a serious problem, excess weight, which often made her the target of ridicule, causing self-doubt and a constant struggle with this flaw. However, at that time, the situation was not yet critical and did not prevent Lindsey from building her future. In the early 2000s, she studied at Midlands Technical College in Columbia, South Carolina, and thanks to her high GPA, she made it onto the list of scholarship recipients in 2004. By 2008, at the age of 23, Lindsey was already working at one of the local banks. It was there that one workday, an attractive 29-year-old locksmith named Jason Donley came to fix a broken safe. They immediately hit it off, and that same day, Jason asked Lindsey out on a date. After a few meetings, the young couple could no longer imagine life without each other. During a romantic boat ride at sunset, supposedly to watch dolphins, Jason proposed to his beloved, and she, of course, said yes. In addition to his pleasant appearance and romantic nature, Jason was a true jack of all trades, able to fix anything and renowned for his housekeeping skills. The couple had numerous shared interests, and at the slightest problem, Jason would rush to Lindsey's aid, equally adept at dealing with a car breakdown or other difficulties. The similarity of their temperaments and the kindness of both only strengthened their bond. The wedding took place 2 years after they met, in 2010. Lindsey looked so charming that the touched Jason couldn't hold back tears of happiness. The newlyweds spent most of their time engaged in favorite but sedentary activities, which quickly led to weight gain and a sense of discomfort for both. In 2014, Jason decided to turn to personal trainer Graham Hockley to remedy the situation and almost immediately began urging his wife to join the sessions. Although Graham was a rather strict and straightforward Brit, it was his methods that helped Jason get in shape fairly quickly, and by 2015, he looked much more toned and athletic than before he started training. Noticing the striking changes in her husband, Lindsey, who had long refused to exercise, finally decided to give it a try and also hired Graham, although she really disliked him at first due to his excessive demands and disregard for her lectures. However, the trainer's approach bore fruit. Within a few months, Lindsey had noticeably lost weight, the workouts became easier for her, and she felt herself getting into shape. Later on, Graham, who had transitioned from trainer to friend of the couple, suggested they try martial arts, specifically judo, as a comprehensive sport for developing true athletic skills. Lindsey and Jason agreed, albeit not without hesitation. Graham became a true expert for the couple, affecting all areas of their life, from nutrition and sports training programs to new exciting prospects. The main thing was to have the desire to work on oneself, which Lindsey demonstrated in full. About a year of intensive training allowed her to shed over 50 kilograms, radically transforming not only her appearance but also her well-being. Health problems such as shortness of breath and joint pain disappeared, and fitness became an integral part of Lindsey's life, without which she could no longer imagine her existence. Lindsey's success and stunning transformation elicited admiration from her loved ones. She even became the face of Graham's advertising campaign, extremely inspired by her new image and strictly adhering to all the trainer's instructions, including her diet. Thanks to her perseverance, Lindsey was able to win awards at several amateur tournaments, which also affected her work. The girl tried to get her entire team involved in sports. All of this gave her incredible self-confidence. But at some point, Lindsey realized that her personal life also required drastic changes. The marital idyll was falling apart before their eyes. Day by day, she and Jason were growing apart. While Lindsey relentlessly moved forward, her husband had long ceased his development and later abandoned training altogether, wanting his wife to do the same. This was partly due to his fears that Lindsey's relationship with Graham might turn into a romance. Gradually, Jason became convinced of his wife's infidelity, although there was no evidence of this. As Lindsey herself said, Graham was well known in their circle, he had helped her transform and continued to be a mentor to her. However, most of the couple's relatives and acquaintances were convinced that Lindsey remained a faithful wife and did not cheat on her husband, despite the fact that Graham had indeed become an important part of their lives, attending all family celebrations and significant events. Both insisted on a purely platonic relationship, but Jason had worked himself up to the extreme. In reality, this was just one of the factors that threw him off balance. The real reason for the discord was the change in Jason's views on the issue of parenthood. Despite the agreement reached even before the marriage to remain childless in order to focus on their own interests and careers, the husbands suddenly wanted to expand their family. However, Lindsey, despite all her husband's pleas, never changed her freedom-loving attitude. The couple discussed this topic more than once but never reached an agreement. Eventually, after 6 years of marriage, Lindsey dared to make a difficult decision, to ask for a divorce, realizing that she could not give Jason what he wanted, as she herself was not yet ready for motherhood. Determined to move on, but in a different direction than her husband aspired to, in April 2016, Lindsey changed her marital status on social media, and shortly after, Jason moved out of their shared home. He settled in an apartment in Simpsonville, South Carolina, about a 2-hour drive from his former home, where he began living with his mother. The man quickly found a job as a locksmith in Greenville, just a few minutes away from his new place of residence. It seemed that the distance from his ex-wife helped Jason start life anew. The divorce was proceeding peacefully, without serious conflicts. Lindsey and Jason agreed on the division of their joint property. The wife decided to renovate and sell their spacious and comfortable house on her own in order to equally share the proceeds, expecting a decent sum. Jason helped her with the renovation, while Lindsey took care of purchasing the materials. To an outsider, the divorce seemed to be a remarkably calm process, allowing the former spouses to maintain a friendly relationship. In February 2017, Lindsey drastically updated her image, changing her hairstyle and hair color, which gave her a fresh and youthful look. Her friends perceived this as a sign of her readiness to start a new chapter in her life. The final completion of the divorce proceedings was scheduled for April 2017, but it was not meant to happen. On March 14 of the same year, Lindsey's body was found in the bathroom of her own home. Shannon Lovell, who was the first to arrive at the scene of the tragedy, had a burning desire to lead the investigation, but he was denied due to his close friendship with the deceased, which could hinder his objectivity. This loss was a devastating blow for both Shannon and all of Lindsey's family and friends. The detectives who took on the case had no clear idea about the motives for the murder. The victim maintained excellent relationships with everyone, and even the divorce from her husband was proceeding as peacefully as possible. In the absence of leads, the investigators turned to the first person that came to mind, Jason, who was in the process of divorcing Lindsey. At the time of the tragedy, the man was at work, and that's where the detectives found him. Upon learning what had happened, Jason burst into tears and then, without hesitation, agreed to go to the station to give a statement. Without waiting for the investigators' questions, he himself began talking about the events leading up to the murder. According to Jason, on Monday, March 13, he was suffering from severe pain in his injured leg, so after taking a painkiller, he went to sleep at home. Waking up in the morning, the man noticed that his car was missing. Since Jason was behind on his lease payments, he assumed that the car had simply been repossessed for debts. In this way, he tried to convince the detectives of the impossibility of getting to the crime scene. However, the suspicious scratches on Jason's face, which he explained away as a bad shave, did not at all resemble razor cuts. The investigators took DNA samples from him, provided voluntarily, and then set off in search of evidence at the victim's house. There, the forensic experts managed to uncover quite a few suspicious details. Apparently, the attack took place not far from the front door, as evidenced by the scattered groceries that Lindsey had purchased immediately before returning home. The woman was last seen alive when she was walking out of the local supermarket, which was confirmed by a receipt from Walmart and video surveillance footage. The footage shows Lindsey calmly strolling through the store, filling her basket with vegetables and fruits, with no signs of being followed. The police traced her path almost to the very doorstep of her house. Lindsey never looked back and generally behaved naturally, indicating the absence of pursuit or threats along the way. Instead, the perpetrator was likely waiting for her inside the house. Soon, one of the patrol officers appeared at the police station, reporting that on March 14, he had seen a driver on the street who matched Jason's description, with a large scratch on his cheek. The man behaved aggressively, accusing the patrol officer of scratching his car, although in reality, the officer was simply standing nearby. The patrol officer didn't notice anything else suspicious, so he let the driver go but remembered him due to his odd behavior. As soon as the officer heard about the investigation and saw a photo of the suspect, he immediately recognized him as the same man. Most interestingly, the incident took place in the parking lot of the supermarket where Lindsey was shopping. Fortunately, the patrol officer remembered the car's license plate number, which, upon verification, turned out to be registered to Jason Lee. This refuted the suspect's claim about the confiscation of his car, but the police decided not to rush to visit Jason, as his obvious lie only heightened suspicions. Instead, the investigators decided to study the video surveillance footage from the supermarket parking lot more thoroughly. The footage showed a car entering the lot at 5:17 a.m. on March 14, and a figure resembling Jason getting out of it. Due to poor lighting and grainy video quality, it was impossible to identify the individual. The figure disappeared into the darkness, and 10 minutes later, it reappeared, but this time in a different vehicle, Jason's work pickup truck. The man parked the pickup next to his personal car and spent 4 minutes rummaging through the trunks of both vehicles, presumably transferring the murder weapon, which he later disposed of. When the detectives tried to find the knife that had been used to slit Lindsey's throat, they were unsuccessful. At the same time, Jason admitted that he had lied about the confiscation of his car, which was actually parked near his house. To all the questioning, the suspect insisted that he had come to the parking lot in the morning to buy groceries and continued to stick to his initial version that at the time of the crime, he was at home under the influence of strong painkillers. During a search of Jason's apartment, detectives found a whole pack of latex gloves in his bag. At the crime scene, scraps of similar blue gloves were also found with traces of DNA from both the victim and the main suspect, suggesting their use by Jason to conceal his fingerprints. However, no other traces, even in the suspect's car, could be detected. On March 17, 2017, just 3 days after Lindsey's murder, 38-year-old Jason Donley was arrested and charged with first-degree murder and first-degree burglary. He was placed in jail without the right to bail. Given the state laws, the suspect faced life imprisonment or even the death penalty. Despite the shock caused by Jason's arrest among the victim's relatives and friends, throughout the entire trial, he never admitted his guilt. The killer's trial took place in November 2019. According to the prosecution, the perpetrator broke into the house by breaking the back door while his wife was away from home. He set up an ambush and waited for her return. When Lindsey entered, Jason attacked her, beat her, and knocked her to the floor. During the fight, the attacker began strangling the woman until she lost consciousness. He then dragged her body to the bathroom and placed it inside. Pulling out a knife, the criminal intended to cut the victim's throat, but at that very moment, she apparently regained consciousness and began to desperately resist, inflicting scratches on Jason's face. Lindsey's hands were covered in defensive wounds received during the struggle in the bathtub. Despite the woman's desperate resistance as she tried to save her life, the man overpowered her and slit her throat. After committing the crime, he planted a bag of light drugs in his wife's car. Obviously, Jason wanted to create the impression that the murder was connected to a failed attempt to purchase or distribute prohibited substances. However, no one in Lindsey's circle confirmed her involvement in such activities. The woman led an active and healthy lifestyle. This version was also refuted by the toxicology report, which found no traces of alcohol or drugs in the victim's body. The medical examiner confirmed the presence of both strangulation marks and defensive wounds on the body, indicating the intentional nature of the killer's actions. The prosecution believed that the crime had a personal motive. Jason could not come to terms with the fact that his wife was leaving him and decided that it would be easier to get rid of Lindsey than to see her happy with another man. Moreover, the killer was clearly experiencing financial problems. In addition to being behind on car payments, he was mired in debt, his credit card was maxed out, and his account had less than $100 remaining. Jason was facing eviction from his home. He even owed his own wife $1,300, and his attempt to get this money back turned into a lawsuit. It was only during the investigation that it became known that Lindsey had obligated Jason to repay the debt by April 1, 2017, and was determined to do so, threatening imprisonment in case of non-payment. When examining the suspect's mobile phone, detectives found his wife's contact listed as "greedy bitch," indicating that the divorce was far from as smooth as it seemed to those around them. It turned out that Lindsey had carefully concealed the behind-the-scenes of her family life, creating the illusion of idol. At the same time, it became known about Jason's new girlfriend, to whom he complained about financial difficulties and the behavior of his ex-wife. Despite the agreement on the distribution of funds from the sale of the house, Jason claimed that this was not enough for Lindsey and that she was trying to take all the money for herself. However, on the day of the murder, the criminal suddenly changed his tone, hinting to his new lover about the quick resolution of financial problems, although he did not specify that this would happen through the murder of Lindsey. Jason's girlfriend and his colleagues confirmed that on the day of the attack, he was limping and complaining about pain in his leg, but the very next morning, no signs of injury were observed, which turned out to be another lie. Despite the fact that Jason lied to the police about cuts on his face while shaving, he told his colleagues about scratches from a cat. To remain unnoticed on the evening of the attack, the suspect blocked all means of communication, making it impossible to track his location via GPS, which looked extremely suspicious. Later, Jason cleared all the information on his phone and the history of search queries in his browser, although the investigation managed to restore some of the data. Even before his wife's body was discovered, the man approached his tax consultant with a request to file a declaration only for himself, acting as if he already knew about Lindsey's death and had crossed her out of his life. During the trial, the deceased's personal trainer, Graham Hockley, denied the existence of a romantic relationship with his client, calling himself her best friend. While giving testimony, the man could not hold back tears, regretting that he had not taught his friend more self-defense techniques that could have helped her fight off her husband's attack. The trainer was convinced that the killer was none other than Jason, with whom Lindsey had been having problems lately. On November 22, 2019, after just over an hour of deliberation, the jury found the 40-year-old Jason guilty of murdering his 31-year-old wife and burglary. The man was sentenced to life imprisonment without the right to early release. Before leaving the courtroom, he again emphasized his innocence and promised to continue fighting for his freedom. To this day, the Lindsey Pilkington Charitable Foundation, established by the victim's family and friends to provide support to women who have suffered from domestic violence, continues to operate. The director of the organization is Shannon Lovell, the same friend of the deceased who was the first to find her body. That's all for now. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any future content. Take care and goodbye.